He tried to escape one hug. Now she's planning the wedding. The air inside Earth's interplanetary welcome facility hummed with anticipation. Milo Hayes adjusted his staff badge for the 5th time, his fingers trembling slightly against the laminated surface. At 25, he hadn't imagined his part-time systems technician job would involve greeting interstellar dignitaries. Yet here he was, standing in line with ambassadors and officials, waiting for the arrival of the Xylorian delegation. "Remember," his supervisor whispered beside him, "these aliens are extremely sensitive to environmental changes. They've been briefed on human customs, but still, keep physical contact minimal." Milo nodded, swallowing hard. "Got it. No high fives to the alien ambassadors. Message received." His supervisor shot him a warning glance before melting back into the crowd of officials. The massive airlock doors at the end of the chamber began their slow rotation, releasing a hiss of equalizing pressure that made everyone stand a little straighter. Milo's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it, humanity's first official diplomatic exchange since joining the Galactic Union 3 months ago. The Xylorians entered in formation, their translucent skin catching the facility's light and throwing subtle rainbows across the polished floor. Their ambassador led the procession, tall and regal with 4 articulated arms that moved with hypnotic precision. Behind him followed what appeared to be advisors, security personnel, and, Milo blinked twice to confirm, a younger, smaller figure that moved with a curiosity absent in the others. "That's Lixari," someone murmured nearby, "the ambassador's daughter, first Xylorian youth to visit Earth." Milo watched as the delegation approached the receiving line. Each human representative gave a formal bow, which the Xylorians returned with a gentle incline of their elongated heads. The process was methodical, precise, and entirely diplomatic, until they reached Milo. Lixari stopped before him, her iridescent eyes widening with interest. She was shorter than the others, her skin more vibrant, shifting between pale blue and lavender as she studied him. Something about her expression, perhaps the universal language of youthful curiosity, made Milo forget protocol entirely. When she extended a hesitant hand in what appeared to be an attempt at a human handshake, Milo responded on pure instinct. He smiled warmly, took her slender fingers in his, and then, in a moment that would change everything, pulled her into a gentle welcome hug. The entire chamber fell silent. Lixari froze in his embrace, her body becoming absolutely still. Milo immediately sensed something was wrong and began to pull away, but not before noticing the dramatic change in her physiology. Her pupils had dilated to twice their original size. Her breathing patterns shifted audibly. When he finally stepped back, she continued staring at him as if seeing through his very molecules. "You chose me," she whispered, her translator pendant converting her native clicks and trills into English that sounded somewhere between reverent and shocked. Before Milo could respond, before he could explain that it was just a casual Earth greeting, Lixari stepped forward and returned the embrace. Unlike his brief, friendly gesture, hers was deliberate, tight, prolonged. Her arms wrapped around him with ceremonial slowness, while her skin flushed a deep, vibrant purple visible to everyone in the chamber. The Xylorian ambassador made a sound like shattering crystal. 2 advisors dropped their diplomatic tablets, and Milo's supervisor looked ready to faint. Because to the Xylorians, as Milo would soon learn, a full-body embrace was not a casual greeting. It was an irreversible declaration of mating bonds, the equivalent of a public marriage proposal, acceptance, and consummation all in one unmistakable act. And everyone had just witnessed it. This cannot be happening. Milo paced the small conference room where Earth officials had sequestered him immediately after the incident. It was a hug, a simple, friendly, completely platonic hug. Director Chen of the Diplomatic Relations Department massaged her temples. "Mr. Hayes, I understand this was unintentional, but you've created quite possibly the most significant interspecies incident since Earth joined the Galactic Union." "How was I supposed to know?" Milo's voice cracked with stress. The cultural briefing was, keep physical contact minimal, not don't hug or you'll accidentally get alien married. The door slid open, revealing Ambassador Krell, a seasoned diplomat who specialized in interspecies negotiations. Her expression was grave as she entered and took a seat at the conference table. "I've spoken with the Xylorian delegation," she said, her tone carefully measured. "The situation is complicated. Can you just explain to them it was a misunderstanding?" Milo pleaded, collapsing into a chair. "Tell them I didn't know what hugging means in their culture." Ambassador Krell's expression softened with sympathy. "That's precisely the problem, Mr. Hayes. In Xylorian culture, intent is irrelevant. The physical act itself is what creates the bond, particularly when performed in a public, ceremonial setting like today's reception. Furthermore, she continued, Lixari has already undergone the first physiological changes of their bonding process. Her biochemistry has begun adapting to yours. It's not just cultural, it's biological for them. Milo stared blankly. What does that even mean? It means, Director Chen interjected, that she's literally changing on a cellular level because of your hug. Their bonding is partially pheromonal. Once initiated, certain hormonal processes begin that, attune her to you. Milo felt the blood drain from his face. So what happens now? Do I need a space lawyer? Is there an annulment process or something? A gentle knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal a human cultural attaché accompanying Lixari herself. She looked different than she had during the reception. Her skin now a steady, calm blue, her posture more relaxed. Her large eyes fixed immediately on Milo, and the corners of her mouth lifted in what appeared to be her species' version of a smile. I would speak with my bonded, she said simply. Director Chen and Ambassador Krell exchanged glances before reluctantly nodding. We'll give you a few minutes, Chen said, ushering the others out. When the door closed, Milo and Lixari were left in uncomfortable silence. He noticed she was holding something, a small, crystalline object that pulsed softly with internal light. I understand there is confusion, Lixari finally said, her translator pendant working overtime to convey the complex emotions in her native language. Your people say you did not intend to initiate bonding. Milo exhaled slowly. Yes, on Earth, hugging is just a friendly greeting sometimes. It doesn't mean what it apparently means to your people. Lixari tilted her head, processing this. Fascinating. You physically embrace without biological consequence. She took a step closer, studying him. Yet you chose to embrace me specifically. Others you greeted differently. It was the way you offered your hand, Milo tried explaining. You seemed nervous, trying to be friendly. I wanted to make you feel welcome. So you shared your warmth with me out of kindness. Her head tilted further, an oddly endearing gesture. Yes, exactly. Just kindness. Not marriage. Lixari considered this, her skin shifting through subtle shades of blue. Among my people, such physical bonding is sacred. Once initiated, it cannot be undone without great suffering. She held out the crystal in her hand. This is my heartstone. It has already begun attuning to your biological signature. Milo stared at the gently pulsing crystal. What happens if we unbond, or whatever the term is? Her expression became somber. The heartstone would shatter. I would become biologically incompatible with any future mate. My status among my people would be, she searched for the right word, diminished, permanently. The weight of unintended consequences settled heavily on Milo's shoulders. A simple, instinctive gesture of welcome had led to this extraordinary situation with no simple resolution. I don't know what to do, he admitted honestly. Lixari's eyes seemed to soften. Then perhaps we begin by understanding. You did not intend bonding, yet the bond exists. I did not seek a human mate, yet here we are. She placed the heartstone on the table between them. My people have a saying, the stars align as they must, not as we wish. Milo stared at the pulsing crystal, his life suddenly complicated beyond anything he could have imagined when he woke up that morning. 3 days after the interplanetary incident, as the media had eagerly dubbed it, Milo found himself sitting uncomfortably at the edge of a massive conference hall, watching Earth's Chancellor address the assembled Galactic Union representatives. The emergency session had been called specifically to address the diplomatic implications of his accidental bonding with the Xylorian ambassador's daughter. This unexpected cultural exchange, the Chancellor was saying carefully, demonstrates the very challenges and learning opportunities that make our recent inclusion in the Galactic Union so valuable. Diplomatic spin at its finest, Milo thought bitterly. What the Chancellor wasn't saying was that Earth's government was walking a precarious line. Invalidating the bond could insult the Xylorians, whose antimatter fuel resources were vital to Earth's new interstellar ventures. But officially recognizing it meant acknowledging that a part-time systems technician had accidentally married into one of the most powerful political families in the sector. Milo's attention drifted to where Lixari sat with her father's delegation, her posture perfect, her skin a calm, focused green. Over the past days, he'd learned that her skin color reflected her emotional state. Blue for contemplation, purple for intimacy, green for concentration. It was actually fascinating once you understood the basic principles of Xylorian physiology. Not that he'd had much choice about learning. The diplomatic corps had stuffed his brain with Xylorian cultural information, desperately trying to prevent any further gaffes. Meanwhile, social media had exploded with memes about the hug herd across the galaxy and Milo Hayes' accidental space husband. His phone buzzed with yet another message from his mother. On the news again. So proud you're representing humanity, even if it's by accident. Tweebus. When do we meet our alien daughter-in-law? Milo silenced his phone with a grimace. His parents found the whole situation hilarious, having no concept of the diplomatic crisis unfolding. He glanced up just in time to see Lixari rising from her seat, moving deliberately toward the central podium. This wasn't in the program. Whispers rippled through the assembly as she approached the microphone, her father watching with what appeared to be resigned acceptance. Respected delegates, Lixari began, her translator pendant converting her words to standard Galactic common. I wish to address the matter that brings us together today. Milo felt his heart rate spike. What was she doing? My bonding with the human Milo Hayes was unexpected, she continued, her voice steady. But among my people, bonding is not merely cultural or ceremonial. It is biological, spiritual, and absolute. The hall fell silent as she turned, her eyes finding Milo across the crowded space. I understand humans view physical connection differently. This has caused confusion and concern. Her skin shifted slightly toward blue. Thoughtfulness, Milo now recognized. However, what is done cannot be undone without consequences that would affect interspecies relations far beyond our personal situation. Milo held his breath, feeling hundreds of eyes shifting between him and Lixari. Therefore, she said, her voice gaining strength, I propose a period of mutual cultural exchange. I will learn human bonding customs. Milo Hayes will learn Xylorian traditions. Together, we will navigate this unexpected connection with respect for both our peoples. Before anyone could respond, Lixari left the podium and walked directly to where Milo sat. The assembly watched in stunned silence as she approached him, her skin shifting gradually to a soft lavender. Then, with deliberate care, she embraced him, a perfect mirror of the human-style hug he had given her days before. The chamber exploded with the clicks and whirs of translator devices working overtime as delegates reacted. Camera drones zoomed in from every angle, and Milo, caught completely off guard, automatically returned the embrace before realizing he was reinforcing the very bond he'd accidentally created. When they separated, Lixari leaned close to his ear. I am learning your customs, she whispered, her voice carrying a hint of what might have been amusement. Was that an acceptable public hug between bonded humans? Milo couldn't help the unexpected smile that tugged at his lips. Actually, that was pretty much textbook. As she returned to her seat, the diplomatic chaos their embrace had unleashed swirling around them, Milo realized something unsettling. He was starting to like her. Milo, how does it feel being Earth's first human married to an alien? Is it true Xylorians have telepathic abilities that activate during physical contact? Are you planning to live on Earth or relocate to Xylor Prime? The barrage of questions hit Milo the moment he stepped outside his apartment building. Overnight, reporters had discovered where he lived, turning his quiet street into a media circus. He pulled his hood tighter around his face and pushed through the crowd, muttering no comment, repeatedly as microphones and camera drones pursued him. His phone chimed with a secure message from Director Chen. Car waiting for you around the corner. Get in quickly. He spotted the government vehicle and practically dove inside, slamming the door on the persistent reporters. The car's windows automatically darkened as it pulled away from the curb. This is insane, Milo groaned, sinking into the seat. I can't even go to the grocery store anymore. The diplomatic aide sitting across from him nodded sympathetically. Your life has become quite complicated, Mr. Hayes. Hence today's meeting. The Chancellor believes we need a more coordinated approach to managing this situation. Managing? Milo raised an eyebrow. You mean damage control? I mean ensuring that both you and Lixari are properly supported through this transition, the aide replied smoothly. The Xylorians take this bond very seriously, as you know. Ambassador Trell has requested you attend a formal introduction to their family lineage ceremony. Milo stared out the window at the passing city. In just 1 week, he'd gone from anonymous tech worker to the face of human-alien relations. His social media accounts had gained millions of followers. News outlets debated everything from his background to his wardrobe choices. Someone had even created a dating app called Hug Match inspired by his predicament. I never asked for any of this, he said quietly. The aide's expression softened. Few who make history do, Mr. Hayes. The car pulled into the underground entrance of the diplomatic center, where security personnel quickly escorted Milo to a private elevator. As they ascended, he steeled himself for another day of negotiations, cultural briefings, and the strange new reality that had become his life. The elevator doors opened to reveal a spacious office with panoramic views of the city. Chancellor Reeves stood by the window, deep in conversation with Ambassador Krell, and, to Milo's surprise, Lixari herself. She turned as he entered, her skin shifting to a delicate shade of violet that he hadn't seen before. Was that happiness? Nervousness? He was still learning to read her chromatic emotional expressions. Milo, Lixari said, using his first name without titles for the first time. I am pleased you have come. Didn't have much choice, he replied, immediately regretting the bitterness in his tone when her color dimmed slightly. But it's good to see you too, he added quickly. Chancellor Reeves cleared her throat. Mr. Hayes, we've been discussing your unique situation with Lixari. The media attention has created certain challenges for our ongoing diplomatic efforts. You mean I've become a distraction, Milo translated bluntly. More like an unplanned focal point, Ambassador Krell corrected. The public is fascinated by your story. Rather than fight that interest, we propose channeling it constructively. Lixari stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful. I have suggested a cultural exchange program, public but controlled. We share our journey of understanding each other's customs and traditions. Like a reality show? Milo asked incredulously. Like a bridge, Lixari countered. My father believes, and your leaders agree, that our situation could help humans and Xylorians develop genuine understanding beyond diplomatic pleasantries. Chancellor Reeves nodded. Carefully managed appearances, educational content about both cultures, shared experiences documented thoughtfully. It neutralizes the tabloid frenzy while serving a genuine diplomatic purpose. Milo looked between them, realizing they'd already decided his path forward. His private life would become public property, a living exhibition of interspecies relations. Do I have any say in this at all? He asked, knowing the answer. Ambassador Krell's expression was sympathetic but firm. You made a choice the moment you embraced Lixari in front of the delegation. Whether intentional or not, that action set certain events in motion. I understand this is difficult, Lixari said softly, moving closer to him. Her skin rippled with subtle patterns that somehow conveyed empathy. But perhaps together, we can transform an accident into something meaningful. Milo looked at her, really looked at her, for perhaps the first time since this whole ordeal began. Beyond the alien physiology, beyond the diplomatic crisis, he saw someone else caught in circumstances beyond her control, trying to make the best of an impossible situation. All right, he said finally, but I have conditions of my own. No, you must breathe through your spiracles while humming the ancestral tone. Herrix, the Xylorian cultural instructor, clicked disapprovingly. Again, please. Milo suppressed a groan as he attempted, for the 7th time, to properly perform the Xylorian greeting ritual. The problem was humans didn't have spiracles, the small respiratory openings that Xylorians used for ceremonial breathing. He was essentially trying to breathe through organs he didn't possess while humming at a frequency his vocal cords struggled to produce. Perhaps we could adapt this element for human physiology, Lixari suggested diplomatically from where she sat observing the lesson. Her skin held the patient green shade that Milo had come to associate with her focused learning states. 2 weeks into their cultural exchange program, and they had fallen into a routine of sorts. Mornings were dedicated to Milo learning Xylorian customs. Afternoons he taught Lixari about human traditions. Evenings were spent in public appearances, carefully orchestrated by their diplomatic handlers, all broadcast to an increasingly invested public audience. Herrix made a sound like tinkling crystal, the Xylorian equivalent of a sigh. Very well, perhaps humans could use their, what are they called? Nostrils? Yes, breathe deeply through your nostrils while producing the tone from your primary breathing apparatus. Milo tried again, feeling ridiculous but determined. This time he managed something close enough to the proper greeting that Herrix's skin brightened with approval. Much improved. You show aptitude for adaptation, Milo human. Thanks, Milo said, collapsing into a chair designed for human comfort, one of many accommodations that had been made in the Cultural Exchange Center. Though I'm still not sure why your formal greetings need to be so complicated. Lixari rose gracefully and moved to sit beside him. Over the past weeks, he'd noticed she was becoming more comfortable with human-like proximity, sitting closer, adopting more Earth-like gestures, even occasionally touching his arm or shoulder to emphasize a point. The complexity serves a purpose, she explained. The greeting simultaneously acknowledges ancestral connection, establishes current hierarchy, and signals peaceful intent. It evolved during our species' early history, when different territorial groups first attempted diplomatic relations. Milo nodded, genuinely interested despite his frustration with the lesson. Earth cultures developed elaborate greetings for similar reasons, though most have simplified over time. Handshakes, for instance, originally showed you weren't carrying weapons. Which is why your hug was so confusing to me, Lixari said, her skin rippling with what Milo now recognized as thoughtful amusement. Such complete physical vulnerability offered to a stranger from another world. Their eyes met, and Milo felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. These moments were happening more frequently, small connections that went beyond the diplomatic script they were following for the cameras. Speaking of vulnerability, he said, checking the time, aren't we supposed to be at the studio in an hour? Something about teaching you human dancing? Lixari's skin flushed briefly violet. A reaction Milo had noticed occurred whenever physical proximity between them was discussed. Yes, your chancellor suggested it would make excellent viewer content. I have studied the basics from your information networks, but the practical application seems complex. Milo couldn't help smiling. Dancing is less about memorizing steps and more about feeling the rhythm. But don't worry, we'll start with something simple. As they gathered their things to leave, Herrick approached with a small container. Before you depart, the ambassador has requested you take this, Milo human. He presented an ornate box containing what appeared to be a crystal, similar to Lixari's heartstone, though smaller and less developed. This is a bonding crystal, Herrick explained. While you cannot form a heartstone as Xylorians do, this sympathetic crystal has been attuned to both your biological signatures. It will help facilitate mutual understanding during your continued cultural exchange. Milo hesitantly accepted the box. What exactly does it do? It resonates with emotional states, Lixari explained, her voice softening. It is a significant gift from my family, an acknowledgement of your efforts to understand our ways. The unspoken meaning hung between them. Despite the artificial circumstances, the diplomatic manipulations, and the public spectacle, something genuine was developing. A connection neither of them had sought, but that neither could now deny. As they left the cultural center, navigating through the ever-present security detail and camera drones that documented their every public move, Milo found himself wondering which was more dangerous, the diplomatic crisis they were managing or the real feelings starting to emerge beneath the surface. Relax your arms, Milo instructed gently. Dancing isn't about perfect posture, it's about connection. Lixari stood before him in the studio, her skin fluctuating between green concentration and violet uncertainty. The teaching session was being recorded for their cultural exchange program, cameras positioned discreetly around the room. What had started as a diplomatic damage control exercise had become Earth's most-watched streaming series, with viewers across the planet tuning in to watch their awkward navigation of each other's customs. Human movement patterns are unpredictable, Lixari observed, trying to mirror Milo's simple box step. Xylorian ceremonial movements follow precise mathematical sequences. That's why this is good practice, Milo replied, carefully placing his hand on her waist while taking her hand with the other. Human dancing is about adapting to your partner, feeling their cues. At his touch, her skin flushed deep violet, and Milo felt a strange tingling sensation where their hands connected. The bonding crystal in his pocket, which he'd taken to carrying everywhere, hummed faintly. The music began, a simple waltz selected for its straightforward rhythm. Lixari's initial movements were stiff, her focus entirely on counting steps. Milo guided her patiently, demonstrating how to follow his lead. Stop thinking so much, he encouraged after their third restart. Feel the music instead. Let your body respond naturally. Natural response to music is not universal, she replied, frustration edging into her voice. Xylorian auditory processing differs significantly from... Forget the biological differences for a minute, Milo interrupted, stopping their movement. An idea struck him. Close your eyes. Lixari hesitated, then complied, her elongated eyelids sliding shut. Now, Milo continued softly, Don't think about the steps or the cameras or cultural differences. Just feel my movement and respond. He began again, gentler this time, applying the slightest pressure to guide her. To his surprise, Lixari's body became more fluid, more responsive. The tingling sensation where they touched intensified, and the crystal in his pocket grew warmer. That's it, he encouraged as they completed a full turn without missteps. You're getting it. When Lixari opened her eyes, they were closer than before, her face just inches from his. Her skin had settled into a deep, steady violet that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the music. I feel something, she said quietly, her translator pendant barely audible over the music. A connection through the movement. Is this the purpose of your dancing? Partly, Milo admitted, suddenly aware of how intimate this moment had become, despite, or perhaps because of, the cameras capturing it all. Dancing has always been a way for humans to connect without words. They continued moving together, their steps becoming more synchronized with each measure. The initial awkwardness melted away, replaced by something neither of them had anticipated: genuine harmony. Your heart rate has increased, Lixari observed, her sensitive fingers detecting the pulse at his wrist. Are you experiencing distress? Milo laughed softly. Not distress, just awareness. Awareness, she repeated, as if testing the word. Yes, I too am very aware of you at this moment. The music swelled, and Milo impulsively led her into a simple spin. Lixari executed it perfectly, returning to his arms with newfound confidence. When she did, something extraordinary happened. Her skin began to emit a subtle luminescence, patterns of light flowing across her surface like constellations shifting in the night sky. The studio fell completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. Lixari, Milo whispered, mesmerized by the display. You're glowing. Her eyes widened with what appeared to be embarrassment. She struggled for words. This is a response that occurs during moments of profound connection. It is not commonly displayed in public. Understanding dawned on Milo. Is this a Xylorian equivalent of blushing? It is considerably more significant, she replied, her voice low. It indicates deep resonance between individuals. Among my people, such illumination typically occurs only between those whose heartstone bond has fully matured. The implications hung in the air between them. What had begun as diplomatic theater, as cultural exchange for public consumption, had evidently triggered something authentic. The bonding crystal in Milo's pocket now hummed audibly, resonating with Lixari's bioluminescent display. One of the diplomatic aides cleared her throat from the corner, breaking the moment. Perhaps we should take a break from recording. Lixari stepped back, her glow dimming but not entirely fading. Yes, I require a moment to recalibrate. As she walked quickly from the studio, Milo stood frozen on the dance floor, the phantom sensation of her touch lingering on his skin. He pulled the crystal from his pocket. It pulsed with a light that perfectly matched the patterns he had seen on Lixari's skin. Well, the program director said from behind her console, unable to keep the excitement from her voice, that's definitely going to boost our viewer numbers. Milo shot her a look that silenced any further commentary. This wasn't about ratings anymore. Something real was happening, something neither their governments nor media teams had anticipated, and he needed to understand what it meant before their next public appearance. The bioluminescence event has been viewed over 2 billion times, Director Chen reported, scrolling through data on her tablet. Public approval ratings for the Xylorian trade agreement have increased by 37%. The Chancellor is pleased. Milo barely heard her, his attention fixed on the garden outside the conference room window, where Lixari was engaged in conversation with her father. Since the dancing incident 3 days ago, their interaction had been limited to carefully scripted public appearances. The spontaneous connection they'd experienced had been replaced by diplomatic caution. Mr. Hayes, Director Chen prompted, did you hear what I said about tomorrow's schedule? Sorry, Milo pulled his attention back to the meeting. What about tomorrow? The joint interview with the Global Network. It's crucial we present a unified narrative about the cultural exchange program. The Xylorians have requested certain topics be considered off-limits, particularly any questions about the bioluminescence display. Milo frowned. Why? It's already the most viewed clip in the history of interspecies relations. Precisely because of its significance, Ambassador Krell interjected. What happened during your dance lesson was deeply personal by Xylorian standards. Ambassador Trell was concerned about his daughter's privacy. Privacy? Milo couldn't keep the edge from his voice. That's rich, considering our entire relationship has been broadcast across the planet for weeks. The ambassador exchanged glances with Director Chen. There's something you should understand, Mr. Hayes. The cultural exchange program was never just about diplomatic damage control. For the Xylorians, it served another purpose entirely. What purpose? Time, Ambassador Krell said simply. Time for Lixari's biological bonding process to either stabilize or naturally fade. Her father hoped that with sufficient exposure to human culture, the initial bonding response might diminish as she came to understand the contextual difference of your hug. Milo sat back, stunned. So all of this, the lessons, the public appearances, it was an experiment to see if she'd get over me. In essence, the ambassador admitted, but the bioluminescence display suggests the opposite has occurred. Rather than weakening, the bond appears to have strengthened significantly. The revelation hit Milo with unexpected force. All these weeks, while he'd been genuinely trying to understand Xylorian culture, to respect their traditions despite the bizarre circumstances, Lixari's family had been hoping their connection would simply dissolve. Does Lixari know about this plan? He asked quietly. The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Milo stood abruptly. I need some air. He left before they could object, heading directly for the garden where he'd seen Lixari. By the time he reached the exterior doors, she was alone, her father having departed. She stood beside a reflecting pool, her skin a contemplative blue as she watched earth fish swim among alien botanical specimens, a perfect metaphor for their own strange coexistence. Lixari, he called softly. She turned, her color shifting instantly to violet at the sight of him. Since learning to read her chromatic expressions, he'd realized that this particular shade emerged only in his presence. Milo, she acknowledged, I did not expect to see you before tomorrow's scheduled appearance. I needed to talk to you. He approached, noticing how the crystal in his pocket grew warmer with proximity to her. Without cameras, without handlers. Just us. Lixari's posture changed subtly, less formal, more natural. I have also wished for such an opportunity. They stood in silence for a moment, the artificial garden sounds filling the space between them. I just learned why your father agreed to the cultural exchange program, Milo finally said. He was hoping our bond would fade if you understood the cultural difference, that your biology would reset once you realized my hug wasn't what you thought it was. Lixari's skin rippled with complex patterns, embarrassment, resignation, and something deeper. Yes, that was his hope. And yours, Milo asked, surprised by how much her answer mattered to him. She looked directly at him, her large eyes unblinking. Initially, I shared his desire. The bond was unexpected, unwanted. It complicated my future, my position within my family lineage. The honesty stung more than Milo had anticipated. But then, she continued, moving closer, I began to know you, not as the human who accidentally bonded with me, but as Milo Hayes. I learned your humor, your patience, your genuine curiosity about my people. I observed how you faced a situation not of your choosing, with adaptability and respect. Her skin began to emit the faintest glow, not the dramatic illumination from the dance studio, but a subtle radiance that seemed more intimate, more controlled. And now, Milo asked, his voice barely above a whisper, now I understand that the meaning of a gesture lies not in its cultural context alone, but in the connection it creates. Lixari lifted her hand, hesitating just short of touching his face. My father wishes me to return to Xylor Prime next week. He believes distance will resolve what cultural understanding has not. The thought of her leaving created an unexpected ache in Milo's chest. Is that what you want? He asked, surprising himself with the vulnerability in his question. Lixari's glow intensified slightly. What I want has become unclear. My heartstone continues to attune to your presence. The biological process cannot be denied. She paused, her skin shifting through subtle gradients of violet and blue. But there is something beyond biology now. Something I did not anticipate. Milo reached for the crystal in his pocket, which hummed with increasing intensity as he held it between them. This has been getting warmer every day. Brighter, too. It responds to our connection, Lixari explained softly. As do I. Without fully understanding what compelled him, Milo closed the distance between them and gently took her hand. Not for cameras, not for diplomatic show, but because he wanted to. The moment their skin connected, the crystal flared with brilliant light, and Lixari's bioluminescence responded in kind, patterns flowing across her skin in hypnotic waves. "I don't want you to leave," Milo admitted, the truth surprising him even as he spoke it. "I know that doesn't make any sense. This whole situation is absurd. We barely know each other. Our cultures are completely different, and none of this was supposed to happen." "Yet it did happen," Lixari replied, her free hand finally completing its journey to touch his face. The contact sent a pleasant warmth spreading across his skin. "Perhaps there is wisdom in accepting what is, rather than lamenting what should have been." In the quiet garden surrounded by the hybrid beauty of Earth and alien flora growing together despite their different origins, Milo realized something profound. Somewhere between diplomatic obligation and cultural confusion, he had developed genuine feelings for Lixari, not because of alien biology or diplomatic necessity, but because of who she was: curious, adaptable, thoughtful, and unexpectedly funny in her observations of human peculiarities. "So what do we do now?" he asked. Before Lixari could answer, the garden door slid open, revealing one of the diplomatic aides. "There you are. We've been looking everywhere. The network wants to do a pre-interview tonight instead of tomorrow morning. Something about primetime ratings." The aide stopped short, noticing their joined hands and Lixari's illuminated skin. "Oh, I'll just give you a moment." As the door closed, Milo and Lixari shared a look of mutual understanding. Whatever was developing between them, it would continue to unfold under the watchful eyes of two worlds. The studio lights were blinding, the audience a sea of expectant faces. Milo adjusted his collar for the third time, hyper-aware of the millions, possibly billions, watching both in studio and via streams across the planet. Beside him on the interview sofa, Lixari sat with perfect composure, her skin a calm shade of green that betrayed none of the tension he knew she felt. "3 minutes until we're live," a production assistant announced, hurrying past with a tablet of talking points that neither Milo nor Lixari had approved. "Remember," Director Chen whispered from just off camera, "stick to the cultural exchange narrative. Emphasize mutual understanding and diplomatic benefits. Avoid personal details." Milo nodded absently, his mind still replaying their garden conversation from yesterday. The connection they'd shared had felt real, more real than anything in the circus that their lives had become. But here they were again, preparing to perform their roles for the insatiable public appetite. "Are you well?" Lixari asked quietly, noticing his distraction. "Just tired of pretending," he replied softly, careful to keep his voice below the sensitive boom microphones suspended above them. Her hand moved subtly across the sofa cushion until her fingers just barely touched his. Even that slight contact sent a warm pulse through the crystal in his pocket. "Then perhaps we should stop pretending." Before Milo could ask what she meant, the famous host of Global Perspectives, Imani Rivera, strode onto the set, her practiced smile gleaming as she took her position. 30 seconds, called the floor director. Rivera settled into her chair, giving them both a reassuring nod. "Don't worry, I'll make this easy for you. Just be yourselves." Milo almost laughed at the irony of being told to be himself after weeks of carefully choreographed public appearances. But there was no time to dwell on it as the countdown began. Cameras pivoted, and they were suddenly broadcasting live to the largest audience in television history. "Good evening, Earth and beyond," Rivera began with characteristic charm. "Tonight we have the couple that has captivated the planet, human systems technician Milo Hayes and Xylorian diplomatic envoy Lixari. Their accidental cultural misunderstanding has evolved into the most fascinating interspecies relationship of our time." The interview began predictably enough. Rivera asked about their initial meeting, the hug incident, and the subsequent diplomatic fallout. Milo and Lixari delivered their well-rehearsed responses, carefully crafted to emphasize cultural exchange and mutual understanding. Then, without warning, Rivera changed course. "The footage of your dance lesson has become the most viewed video in human history," she said, as clips from that day played on screens around the studio. "Lixari, that remarkable bioluminescent display. Can you explain what that signifies in Xylorian culture?" Milo tensed. This was explicitly on the list of forbidden questions. He glanced toward the wings where Director Chen was making frantic cutting motions with her hands. But Lixari, to his surprise, answered without hesitation. "In my culture, such illumination occurs when there is profound resonance between bonded individuals," she said simply. "It is a physiological response that cannot be fabricated or controlled. It is truth made visible." A hush fell over the studio. Rivera leaned forward, sensing the moment. Truth made visible, she repeated. And what truth was being expressed in that moment, if I may ask? Lixery's skin began to shift toward violet. She glanced briefly at Milo before responding. That what began as an accidental cultural misunderstanding had become something else entirely. The crystal in Milo's pocket grew suddenly warm. He reached for it instinctively, drawing it out before he could stop himself. As it emerged pulsing with light that matched the subtle patterns now appearing on Lixari's skin, the audience gasped. That's a Xylorian bonding crystal, Rivera observed, her professional demeanor momentarily broken by genuine surprise. Those are traditionally exchanged only between life partners, Lixari finished for her. Yes. All the careful diplomatic messaging, all the planned talking points vanished from Milo's mind. There was only this moment, this truth that had been building between them despite every effort to frame their relationship as a cultural experiment. Milo, Rivera turned to him, recognizing the unscripted reality unfolding on her stage. Did you know the significance of this crystal when you accepted it? I was told it would facilitate mutual understanding, he admitted, looking directly at Lixari rather than the host. I didn't realize it was also measuring the truth of our connection. The studio was absolutely silent now, the audience collectively holding its breath. Even the camera operators seemed transfixed, their equipment momentarily forgotten. And what is the truth of your connection? Rivera asked softly, voicing the question that two worlds were waiting to hear answered. Milo looked at the glowing crystal in his palm, then at Lixari, whose skin now pulsed with increasingly bright patterns. In that moment, all the diplomatic complications, all the cultural confusions, all the public scrutiny seemed to fall away. There was only this simple truth. The truth is, he said, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart, I'm no longer pretending to accept this bond. I actually do. Lixari's skin erupted in brilliant illumination, patterns flowing like liquid light across her entire form. The crystal in Milo's hand responded in kind, glowing so brightly that the studio lights seemed dim by comparison. From the wings, Milo could hear Director Chen's voice rising in alarm, Ambassador Krell attempting to intervene, production assistants scrambling, but none of it mattered as Lixari reached for his hand, entwining her fingers with his. Nor am I pretending, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the growing commotion. The bond that began accidentally has become my chosen path. Rivera, consummate professional that she was, recognized the historic moment unfolding on her stage. Ladies and gentlemen, beings of Earth and beyond, we are witnessing something extraordinary tonight. Perhaps the first genuine interspecies bond publicly acknowledged in our history. The audience erupted in applause. Cameras zoomed in on their joined hands, and somewhere in the chaos, Milo heard Ambassador Krell mutter, Well, there goes the carefully calibrated diplomatic narrative. But as he looked into Lixari's luminous eyes, Milo found he didn't care about diplomatic narratives anymore. For the first time since this wild journey began, they were being honest, with the worlds watching and with each other. Unprecedented viewer numbers. Diplomatic protocols completely disregarded. Public response overwhelmingly positive. Xylorian representatives demand immediate private consultation. The voices overlapped in the chaos of the backstage area as Milo and Lixari were hustled through a corridor away from the still applauding studio audience. Security personnel formed a protective barrier around them, communications devices chirping insistently with incoming messages from government officials on both sides. Director Chen looked as though she might either faint or explode. Do you have any idea what you've done? She hissed at Milo. This goes beyond personal choices. This is about interspecies diplomacy at the highest level. Before Milo could respond, Ambassador Trell appeared, his tall form parting the crowd of humans like a ship through water. Lixari's father's skin was shifting through complex patterns that Milo couldn't read, but his demeanor radiated authority and concern. My daughter, he said, his translator pendant converting his native clicks and trills into clipped English. We must speak privately. Lixari's hand tightened around Milo's. Whatever you wish to say, father, can be said in Milo's presence. Our bond is acknowledged now. The ambassador's skin darkened. This public declaration was not approved. The implications for our family lineage, for our position within the Galactic Union? With respect, Ambassador, Milo interrupted, finding courage he didn't know he possessed. Your daughter isn't just a diplomatic asset. She's a person with her own feelings and choices. A tense silence fell over the crowded corridor. Humans and Xylorians alike seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the ambassador's response. Even Director Chen stopped her frantic communications, sensing the gravity of the moment. Ambassador Trell studied Milo with unreadable alien eyes. Then, to everyone's surprise, his skin shifted to a calm blue tone. "You speak with conviction, Milo Hayes," he said finally, "as my daughter did on your broadcast. Perhaps this is why the Heartstone bond has strengthened rather than faded." He turned to Lixari. "Is this truly your choice, daughter? Not biology, not diplomatic necessity, but choice?" Lixari straightened, her luminescence still subtly visible beneath her skin. "It is, Father. What began accidentally has become intentional. I have studied human customs enough to understand the difference, and I choose this bond." For several long moments, Ambassador Trell was silent, the patterns on his skin flowing in what appeared to be deep contemplation. Then he reached into his ceremonial robes and withdrew an object, another crystal, larger and more intricately formed than either Lixari's heartstone or the bonding crystal Milo carried. "This is our family's ancestral crystal," he explained, holding it between them. "For 20 generations it has recorded the bonds of our lineage. I brought it to Earth not expecting to use it, but to remind my daughter of her heritage." He looked directly at Milo. "If you truly wish to honor this bond, human, you must understand its fullness in our tradition." "I want to understand," Milo said earnestly. Ambassador Trell inclined his head. "Then we shall proceed with a proper acknowledgement ceremony, not a diplomatic performance, but a true honoring of the bond you share." He turned to Director Chen and the other officials. "Inform your leaders. This is no longer a matter for public consumption, but a private ceremony according to Xylorian tradition." The humans exchanged uncertain glances, clearly thrown by this turn of events. "The public will want to know," one of the media liaisons began. "The public has seen enough," Ambassador Trell said firmly. "Some matters transcend spectacle. This is one of them." As the corridor erupted into renewed activity, officials making calls, security redirecting paths, media handlers crafting statements, Milo felt a strange calm descend. After weeks of performing for cameras, of carefully scripted interactions and diplomatic maneuvering, the prospect of something authentic, something private, felt like coming up for air after too long underwater. Lixari's father approached them, his manner now less imposing, more personal. "Come," he said simply. "There is much to prepare and little time. The alignment of our home star with your Earth moon, propitious for bonding ceremonies, occurs tonight." As they followed him through the building's diplomatic wing toward the Xylorian delegation's private quarters, Lixari leaned close to Milo. "Are you certain of this path?" she asked softly. "Once acknowledged in full ceremony, the bond is recognized across all Galactic Union worlds. Your life will never be the same." Milo thought about his former existence. The quiet apartment, the routine job maintaining systems few people noticed or cared about. The ordinary trajectory of an ordinary life. Then he looked at Lixari, at the extraordinary being who had literally crashed into his world through a diplomatic accident. "I'm certain," he replied, surprised by the complete absence of doubt in his heart, "though I have absolutely no idea what I'm getting myself into." Lixari's skin rippled with what he now recognized as her version of laughter. "That," she said, "is perhaps the most human approach to bonding I have yet observed." Behind them, Earth officials scrambled to adjust to this unexpected development. Ahead of them, a ceremony from another world awaited, and between them, a connection neither culture had anticipated continued to grow stronger with every step. The Xylorian ceremonial chamber had been established in what was once a diplomatic reception hall, transformed through lighting, atmosphere adjustments, and arrangements of crystalline structures that hummed with subtle harmonics. Earth's full moon was visible through the chamber's skylight, aligned perfectly with the distant star that the Xylorians called home. A convergence that occurred only once every 2.7 Earth years. Milo stood at the center of the chamber, wearing ceremonial robes that had been hastily adapted for human physiology. The fabric seemed to respond to his body temperature, shifting between cooling and warming as needed. Around his neck hung the bonding crystal, now pulsing in regular rhythm with his heartbeat. Only essential witnesses were present, Ambassador Trell and 3 Xylorian elders representing their family lineage, Chancellor Reeves and Ambassador Krell representing Earth, and 2 cultural scribes to record the ceremony for their respective historical archives. No media, no cameras, no public broadcast. After weeks of living under constant observation, the privacy felt sacred. A soft tone resonated through the chamber, signaling Lixari's approach. When she entered, Milo's breath caught in his throat. Her skin glowed with controlled luminescence, patterns flowing like living calligraphy across her form. She wore ceremonial attire that seemed composed more of light than fabric, and around her neck, her heartstone pulsed with the same rhythm as Milo's crystal. As she approached, Ambassador Trell began reciting in the Xylorian language, musical clicks and harmonic tones that the translation pendants rendered into English for the human witnesses. When worlds align, pathways open, he intoned. When beings recognize each other across the divide of different stars, the universe acknowledges this rarity. Today we witness such recognition between Lixari of Xylar and Milo of Earth. Lixari took her position opposite Milo, the moonlight and starlight converging between them through the skylight. Her eyes met his, and despite the alien nature of her physiology, he recognized the emotion there, certainty mixed with wonder, not unlike what he himself was feeling. The bonding began without intention, Ambassador Trell continued, born of cultural misunderstanding. Yet it has evolved with intention, nurtured by mutual respect and growing affection. The Heartstone speaks true. The resonance between these beings is genuine. He turned to the ancestral crystal he had revealed earlier, now suspended in a field of energy at the center of the chamber. It was larger than Milo had initially realized, complex facets catching and refracting both moonlight and the bioluminescence emanating from Lixari. This crystal has recorded the bonds of our lineage for 20 generations, Trell explained. Each facet tells the story of a connection. Today, a new facet forms, one unlike any before it, the first to bridge our world and Earth. At a gesture from the ambassador, Milo and Lixari each extended their hands toward the ancestral crystal. The moment their fingers touched its surface, the entire chamber filled with resonant humming. The crystal between them began to reshape itself, a new facet literally growing and forming before their eyes. Now, Ambassador Trell said, the words of commitment. Lixari, daughter of Xylar, speak your truth. Lixari's eyes remained fixed on Milo's, as she spoke in her native language first, then in English. I recognize you across the vastness of different origins. I acknowledge the bond that grows between us. I commit to its nurturing, to understanding your world as you understand mine, to finding a shared path among the stars. The ancestral crystal pulsed brightly with each phrase, the new facet growing more distinct. Milo Hayes of Earth, Ambassador Trell turned to him. Speak your truth. Milo had been provided no script for this moment. He had been told simply to speak from his heart, trusting that the crystal would recognize sincerity. Taking a deep breath, he found the words forming naturally. I recognize you, Lixari, across differences I once couldn't imagine. What began by accident has become my choice. I commit to understanding your world, to respecting your traditions, to creating something new between us that honors both where we come from and where we might go together. With his final word, the ancestral crystal flared with brilliant light. The new facet completed its formation, distinct yet integrated with the whole. Simultaneously, both Milo's bonding crystal and Lixari's heartstone illuminated with matching intensity. It is acknowledged, Ambassador Trell declared, satisfaction evident in his tone. The bond is recognized by ancestral record. It will be known throughout the Galactic Union that Lixari of Xylar and Milo of Earth are joined in the tradition of our people, and with the blessing of both worlds. A harmonious tone filled the chamber, the Xylorian equivalent of applause. The human witnesses followed with their own gentle clapping, the solemnity of the moment calling for restraint rather than exuberance. Chancellor Reeves stepped forward, representing Earth's acknowledgement. On behalf of our world, I recognize this bond and the bridge it builds between our peoples. May it be the first of many such connections as we find our place among the stars. As the formal ceremony concluded, the witnesses gradually withdrew, leaving Milo and Lixari alone in the chamber, with the aligned celestial bodies still visible through the skylight. The ancestral crystal had been returned to its protective casing, but their personal crystals continued to pulse in unison. So, Milo said finally, a smile tugging at his lips, does this mean I need to update my relationship status on social media to bond it according to ancient alien tradition? Lixari's skin rippled with amusement, the patterns of her bioluminescence shifting to what he now recognized as her expression of joy. I believe it's complicated might be the human phrase that best applies. Actually, Milo replied, taking her hands in his, I think it's surprisingly simple. Different worlds, different species, different customs, but this feeling makes perfect sense. As Earth's moon and Xylor's distant star remained briefly aligned above them, Milo and Lexari stood at the center of the chamber, their unique bond acknowledged and celebrated. What had begun with a misinterpreted hug had evolved into something neither culture had protocols for, something new that would require them to write their own rules as they went forward. Outside the chamber, two worlds waited with questions, curiosity, and no small amount of adjustment ahead. There would be practical matters to navigate, where they would live, how they would communicate their journey to others who might follow a similar path, what role they would play in ongoing diplomatic relations. But for now, in this moment of perfect alignment, none of that mattered. The universe had witnessed their choice to embrace what began as an accident and transform it into intention. And as Elixiri's luminescence cast gentle patterns of light across Milo's human skin, both knew with absolute certainty that the journey ahead, however complicated it might be, was exactly the path they were meant to walk together. Whether hugging meant marriage or not, they had found something real across the vastness of difference, and that both their worlds would come to understand was the truest bond of all.